Hey guys, and welcome back to a new episode of Mobile Dev News, this time for April. So that's the format where I always summarize those news from the mobile and specifically Kotlin ecosystem that are the most relevant for you as a developer in this ecosystem. So you really don't have to look up these news yourself and filter out what is important, what is not important, because I do that for you. So you get a condensed summary here once a month. Getting right into it, new Android Studio version got released this March, which is Android Studio Panda 2. And what's new in this version? Of course, quite a bit. What is maybe worth talking about? There is a new AI wizard to create a project. Here on the new project, Create with AI, gives you a typical AI prompt field to just create an initial project here with the help of AI. Would I use that? Probably not, because you just have the chance to leave a prompt here, as I understand that. And then based on that, it will do something. But in order to get good output from an AI agent and an AI model, you first of all want to craft a plan, think really through what you want to do, ask the AI what it plans to do, and then refine that a little bit. And all these options you don't have here. So I just create a normal project normally, and then start with your agent of choice directly in that project. Another thing about AI that is a bit cooler is in your version catalog. If you update a version, you can update all libraries with AI and not just bumping those versions, but really also making sure that possible version conflicts and errors with that update are resolved by AI. But that's also nothing groundbreaking here in the end, because you can tell that exact same thing to your AI agent, and it was already able to do that. So now it's just a button in the IDE to do that a bit more easy, but also not a big deal, I think. Then another change is regarding the creation of themed app icons. So the icons in the end for that adjust to the style of the home screen of the user. So far, you couldn't really create these directly in Android Studio, but now that is possible in the Asset Studio. So the little window that opens up when importing a vector graphic in Android Studio. And now you can also work with these monochrome themed icons directly in here and create a fitting themed app icon in Android Studio. And then transitioning from Android Studio to Room version 3.0, which just got released in March. Actually just the first alpha, so it's not stable yet or so. But there are some important changes about using Room as a database framework for Kotlin multi-platform. And the fact that this is actually like a version bump in the very first digit, so from 2 point something to 3 point something, means that this is a major breaking release. So you possibly have to change something in your Room implementation the moment you upgrade. Why is this a breaking release? Well, a cool thing that has changed is now that Room is fully supporting every aspect of Kotlin multi-platform. Like, you probably think, okay, that was already possible before, but now it also supports Kotlin JS and Kotlin WebAssembly. So if you really want to implement a local database in a Kotlin browser-based application, because so far Room wasn't supported on these targets. This also means that Room is now 100% generating Kotlin code and no more Java code, since otherwise this wouldn't be possible here to support that way. It means that the Kotlin team made Room coroutine first, so that you are in the end now forced to use Room with coroutines, and you can't have blocking function calls in your DAOs anymore. So what you can't do anymore is have your insert database function and just leave that as a normal function without the suspend keyword. Because previously, by default, these kinds of functions would just be blocking function calls. You could then wrap in a thread or so, or not, and block your main thread that way. But now, since the Kotlin JS and Kotlin WebAssembly targets had the limitation that you can't really have blocking database calls like on the mobile world there, that had to be fixed. So now everything in Room is sticking to either suspend functions and enforces that. And if you actually get some data, then you can do so either also via a suspend function or in a reactive way. So by returning a flow, for example, or some kind of other reactive data structure. Then some changes about what Google sees as high quality apps, or rather what Google sees as low quality apps, and will possibly derank. Because there are certain metrics that Google, of course, looks at in apps that are deployed to Google Play, like, for example, the amount of crashes users experience, the amount of ANRs they get, so when the application is not responding because you are blocking the main thread, for example. And all those metrics, if they get too large, so you have too many crashes in your sessions, then Google uses that as a way to see, okay, this app is probably not that good, and will perhaps derank that a little bit based on that. And now battery is actually going to count in the same types of metrics that Google uses for that. So how much battery your apps actually consume, specifically when speaking about wake locks or partial wake locks. So that's in the end a way for your app to request CPU processing power when the display is off. And that is something that Google doesn't like. Specifically, apps holding those non-exempt wake locks. So unless your app is exempt of requesting that wake lock and Google says it's okay, there are certain exceptions for that, but apps holding non-exempt partial wake locks for over 2 hours when the app is in the background in more than 5% of sessions. So a lot of conditions here in a single sentence, so that in 5% of the times users use your app, it requests a partial wake lock when it's in the background for at least 2 hours, then your app will be penalized by Google Play. What does this penalty look like? Well, on the one hand, as I mentioned, it could be that it gets deranked a little bit, and Google sees this as a rather lower quality app. And it could be that you get such a warning here in Google Play that your app may use a lot of battery. And while there are some use cases where these partial wake locks really are necessary, for example, for Bluetooth-related features, in these cases where you really have to use them, of course, make sure that the wake lock is definitely released the moment you don't need it anymore. Obviously, don't just leave it open just in case. But for many scenarios where you could solve that via a wake lock but don't have to, there are better ways to solve that, and then your app won't be penalized. Most prominently, that is using Work Manager, especially for these user-initiated data transfers. So the user is uploading a file, downloading a large file, then use Work Manager for that, because even though that may consume battery, Google does not count this for the battery use of your app in the context of these penalties here, because that is something the user has explicitly opted in for or requested. Then what is new here is this new Android bench, which is in the end just a Google released benchmark, like an official benchmark that compares different LLM models for Android development specifically. Honestly, it's a little bit biased because Google, of course, also owns some of these models. I'm not sure how objective this comparison is, because surprise, surprise, Google's model, Gemini 3.1, is on top here, and best for Android development tasks. So we can actually see this benchmark here. Gemini 3.1 preview here is at the top with a score of 72, followed by Cloud Opus 4.6. So I'm not sure how objective that is, but yeah, it's in the end a nice little leaderboard. Would I now use Gemini 3.1 if I'm used to Opus and everything is structured around Opus in my AI workflow? No, not for 6 more percent points. This is probably a difference you won't notice here. Use this as a nice little help to choose your model, but nowadays my impression is that everyone uses Cloud Code anyways, at least the power users of AI agents. And while you can even use other models inside Cloud Code, most people will probably use it with Opus, and that is a super, super great model at this point. The difference would have to be quite more significant in order for me to really switch the agent tool that I'm using. By the way, if you are using Cloud Code or you just get into it, then I still have 8 skills that really help your Cloud Code instance to use my personal best practices for Android architecture and my standards out of the box the moment it creates some sort of Android architecture related code. That is still available as a free download, which you can find the link for in this video's description. And then there are some more changes about developer verification. So that was, I think, together with site loading, one of the hottest and most discussed news from Google in the past year. And there are some changes to both that. So in case you've missed that, on the one hand, what Google calls site loading is in the end nothing else than you being able to install an APK from an unknown source. An unknown source really just meant a source that is not Google Play. That got a lot of backlash from developers because, well, one big thing or one big part that made Android kind of unique and compared to Apple is that you had a bit more freedom as a user of it. You weren't forced into this Apple-like sandbox. You can only install apps from the official App Store, not from outside unless you jailbreak your device. On Android, that was always a little bit more easygoing and a bit more free. And then Google has decided, let's actually stop this. Not completely, but let's say If a user wants to install an APK from outside Google Play, then the developer of that APK actually has to be verified at Google Play, even if this APK is not in Google Play and installed from there. Which is, of course, super annoying because you have to issue your government ID to Google, have to go through all their policies and verification flows, even if you don't want to use their store. And that is why Google got a lot of backlash on that, got a lot of hate on that. And now they are actually reacting and responding to some of the criticism with these changes because they are launching an advanced flow that technically allows you to still install apps from unknown sources, even if the developers of those are not verified. This advanced flow is more something for power users of Android who really know what they are doing. That's why it's called advanced flow. And it can be used to let you install apps from unknown sources from unverified developers if you actually turn on your developer mode on the device, or you tap on the build number 7 times, turn this on, and there in the developer options, you can then turn on this advanced flow. Even then, if you turn this on, this will only become active after a time window of 24 hours expires. So you turn this on, you have to wait 24 hours, and only then you can actually install the app from unknown sources that you perhaps want to install. This time window is there as like the argument from Google at least is that this prevents people from being scammed into turning on this advanced flow in order for making them install an APK. So if you're not a technical person and you are very naive maybe, and someone wants to trick you into installing their malware APK, then if you actually have to have a delay of 24 hours between someone wanting you to install their malware and you actually being able to install it, then this makes it drastically harder for them to really get you into doing that. It's not impossible, but it's harder because the victim can't be pressured into doing that anymore. So that's one thing which honestly only solves one part of the medal, so that the developers or the users of Android who didn't like the change of limiting their flexibility and freedom on Android that they now have, and or they at least have the option again to regain that freedom, even though it's a bit more difficult and more going through something, but it's possible. That part is solved, but what's not solved is that you still have to verify your app if you want to share it outside of Google Play, because you definitely can't account for all of your users turning on this advanced flow. For this verification, however, Google is launching a new limited distribution account here for students and hobbyists, which honestly is a joke because it allows you to share apps with a small group up to 20 devices without needing to provide a government-issued ID or pay something. So it means, okay, you don't have to verify, but you can only let 20 devices install your app. And I think even if you're a hobbyist and you say, I now have put in so much work, I can finally deploy my hobby app to Google Play, then I don't think you will be fine with installing it just to 20 devices. Even if you're a hobbyist, you put in so much work, then you of course also want technically unlimited people to install it and provide you feedback on. So I don't think this does anything. This is really just something where I think Google wanted to sound like they approached the criticism a little bit, but didn't actually really. So you still don't get around this verification, which will be enforced from September this year, September 2026. And these other two features here will launch in, I think, August 2026. But that's it. We're through. Thanks for watching. As usual, in the video's description, you can find really cool Android and Kotlin multi-platform premium courses that really provide you a complete technical deep dive with every single line of code explained on all kinds of topics, from really Kotlin basics to building complete industry scale apps. Check it out if that sounds cool to you. And other than that, thanks for watching. See you back in the next video. Have an amazing rest of your week. Bye-bye.